Hi, my name is Teresa Foster, and this is my submission for the Stages of Disaster video response. Stages of Disaster video response consisted of an interview where the stages of disaster was being applied to the U.S. tragedy that was the Hurricane Katrina in 2005. There are 6 stages of disaster. 1. Pre-disaster. 2. The disaster. 3. Heroic phase. 4. Honeymoon phase. 5. Disillusionment phase. And 6. Reconstruction phase. The video started with the definition of collective trauma. Collective trauma was defined as a blow to basic tissues of social life that damages the bonds attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of community. Disasters does this to communities by eliminating all of a person's resources that they have grown accustomed to being there, such as churches, friendships, homes, schools. All of their normal resources have been torn apart by this disaster that they have grown accustomed to seeing and utilizing, bringing their access to these resources to limitations are none. Pre-disaster is when, as people prepare for the disaster, some people are expecting it, and others may be more complacent with it. For example, in the case of Hurricane Katrina, with evacuation, some people were evacuating. It was interesting to me in the video as they discussed evacuation and the cost and the emotional toll that it had on the people and the community there. I never thought about the financial part of it, just rather people going away or trying to leave the setting. And after hearing her discuss it, it made me realize that if for those who are not financially able to evacuate, it causes them to have to stay. They would rather risk the storm because they don't have the financial means to leave, which may add to the traumatic experience and stress of the entire situation in general. And so there are others who may be more complacent and they may feel nothing is happening. And so therefore they make no preparations for it. And then they lose everything. And this could lead to a form of guilt after the disaster has already come, because they probably feel as if they would have prepared better or took it more seriously, they would not have lost everything or anything, or maybe even a loved one. The second stage of disaster is the disaster itself, the impact, and what is happening around them, and all of the and the community sees everything that is happening. What also stood out to me regarding the disaster was the domino effects of one disaster leading to another disaster. As stated in the video, Hurricane Katrina, the rain itself and the flooding itself was traumatic. However, leading to the levees breaking and people losing power. For those who are stranded in their homes or who were safe in their homes and they lost power for days, one traumatic event leading to another, and how the domino effect of a disaster, and that it's not just one thing, that it'll be multiple things that the community will have to overcome. It made me think about when Houston had our own frost in 2021. My grandma lost power and she was on oxygen. And so the ambulance had to go get her and bring her to my apartment. And so the city itself was going through a disaster in a sense, where the whole city shut down due to a frost and no one knew how to respond. Most of the city was without power. And having to learn how to get through it, and the pipes in everyone's homes bursting. And then people with medical conditions, such as my grandma, having to find a means to survive when their life depends on electricity, such as my grandma with the oxygen. And so one disaster event can lead to a domino effect of other traumatic crises that happens. And so that was something I found interesting watching the video. The third phase is the heroic phase. This is when everyone comes together and there's news coverage, and the severity is being brought to the masses, and everyone pulls together to help those being impacted. So for with Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Harvey here in Houston, we see people with their own personal boats going to rescue their neighbors from their roofs and rescue animals, and agencies coming together to bring people to shelters and provide them that psychological first aid of checking in, see how they're doing, their needs are being met, if there's any food, clothes that is needed for them to help get them to a place of feeling safe and secure, as with Maslow's, and so hierarchy of needs. So the community coming together and everyone doing what they can, pitching in to help those that have been impacted, which brings to the fourth phase of the honeymoon phase. Initially, I was quite surprised to know that this term was the honeymoon phase, because the term honeymoon is usually associated with a happier event and not one of a disaster. But the concept of hope for a better future made it make sense to me regarding the term honeymoon. So this is when agencies get funds to help those who have been impacted, and money is starting to pour out into the community. I remember when I was a disaster relief case manager for survivors of Hurricane Harvey, my agency received abundance of money to help people rebuild their homes, and help them with getting new cars or car repairs, or helping them with their mortgages, helping them with their utilities. And so it was the agencies being able to let people know, we have the money, even if you don't, to help you rebuild and get back. And so now the community and the survivors and those who were impacted are having a sense of hope. And there was also, during Hurricane Harvey, there was also an outpour of mental health services for those who were impacted, to help them be able to move forward, and those who may have lost someone, who lost their homes and having to deal with the psychological impact that it had on them. And I know that that was a outpour as well here in Houston for Hurricane Harvey. And so helping people understand that there is hope, and helping them be encouraged to be able to move forward. The next stage is the disillusionment phase. This is when those who have been impacted have are realizing the reality of everything that happened. So for those who may have been going through therapeutic sessions, they're probably getting to a point now where they're realizing, okay, the norm that I once knew is no longer here. And so they're realizing that their community may not come back. They may not be able to rebuild their home. They may not be able to go back to the spot of their home. For example, for those of Hurricane Katrina, when they all evacuated to certain cities, they started to establish a life there, and their idea of being able to return back to Louisiana was gone. And so this may create a sense of sorrow and grief in them, where they have to learn to accept their new norm and move forward from there. In the video, it was stated that there was an increase of suicide attempts, which was very interesting to hear, and very understanding, though. It's sad. People are sometimes not always able to cope, and the loss seems so much severe and significant to them than being able to move forward. And so it is essential during this phase to make sure that the mental health resources are available and accessible to those who were impacted, as stated earlier, due to the amount of grief and sorrow that may come upon them during this phase. The last phase is the reconstruction phase. So the reconstruction phase is those who are able to accept that there is a new normal, that they have to be able to move forward with. And they look around their community and see that there are new buildings and new resources being made accessible to them in their community to help with their needs. And also the city's response regarding, we see that there is a flaw in the community's or city's response to these kind of situations. What steps can we make, and what resources can we have to be able to better prepare us if this tragedy and disaster was to happen again? And so the community is not only being able to get back to establishing a new norm, but so is the city's response to said disasters. It was a really interesting video to watch, and it really changed my perspective of disasters and those who've been impacted. And I really hope I'm able to remember this and apply it to my past experience as being a disaster relief case manager for survivors of Hurricane Harvey, and seeing about how I can implement the two regarding psychological first aid and my own mental health career in the future. Thank you.